My name is Captain Eleanor Ford. I'm 39 years old. I've served in the military for over 15 years, and according to my family, I'm a walking example of wasted potential. No husband, no children, no house with a white picket fence, and I still drive the same beat-up Ford Focus I bought fresh out of college. At every family gathering, I'm the cautionary tale how not to live your life. My sister loves to whisper about how I never settled down, and my brother likes to offer financial advice I didn't ask for. Meanwhile, I'm coordinating joint operations across 3 continents, overseeing field teams that don't exist on any public record, and holding a level of clearance that would make them sweat if they knew, but I don't tell them that. As far as they know, I shuffle papers at some logistics office for the Department of Defense. They imagine me in a cubicle with a dusty plant and a stack of stapled memos, counting down to lunch like it's the most thrilling part of my day. They call my life boring. Truth is, boring would be a vacation. Last week, I was sleeping on a cot in a secure base in East Africa, decoding satellite intel and prepping for a night op we couldn't afford to get wrong. 2 days later, I was in a Pentagon briefing room, giving a sitrep that could shift diplomatic strategy in real time. But sure, to my family, I'm just Eleanor, the underachiever with the military discount and no +1 at the holidays. I've learned to smile through it. Some truths are better kept quiet, and some jobs, the kind that carry weight in silence, are never meant to be explained. I was the middle child in a family where achievement was currency. My older brother, Paul, was the golden one varsity everything, early acceptance to Yale, and now a corporate lawyer who owns 3 watches worth more than my car. My younger sister, Rachel, married her college sweetheart, got her MBA, and curates her life as a Pinterest board come to life, complete with matching toddler outfits and seasonal charcuterie boards. I was the one who always colored just slightly outside the lines. In high school, I loved history and languages, but my B in AP Calculus was the beginning of the end. According to my dad, "You're smart, Eleanor," he said, "but you don't push yourself hard enough. You lack focus." My mom tried to soften it with her usual, "We just want you to live up to your potential," which really meant, why can't you be more like Paul? I got a scholarship to a state university, not an Ivy, and instead of going pre-law or business, I majored in international studies. That's when they really started to worry. They thought I'd outgrow the phase, find a husband, settle into a real job. But during my junior year, after an ROTC internship, I told them I planned to enlist. The silence at that dinner table could have drowned a marching band. My dad blinked twice and said, "The military? Are you serious?" My mom looked like someone had told her I was joining a traveling circus. "But you have so much potential," she whispered, as if I were throwing my life away. My brother chuckled and said, "What are you going to do? Polish boots for a living?" No one asked me why I chose that path. No one cared that I'd found something that finally gave me a sense of purpose, structure, and challenge. I had always felt like an outsider in my own family, and that moment sealed it. When I left for basic training, my mother didn't come to the send-off. She said airports were too emotional. My dad gave me a firm handshake like he was closing a deal. Paul texted me a meme about camouflage and called it support. For the first few years, I still tried. I sent postcards, called on holidays, showed up at family events in neatly pressed uniforms, thinking maybe the medals would mean something. They never asked what they were for. Not once. Instead, I got questions like, "So do you actually see action, or is it mostly desk stuff?" And, "Are you ever going to get a job with normal hours?" They said these things with smiles, like they were harmless jokes. I smiled back and let them. I was promoted to captain at 32. When I told my parents, my mother replied, "That's nice, honey. Rachel's youngest just got into gifted preschool." Dad asked, "What does that actually mean?" "In your line of work." My brother said, "So are you, like, important now?" They never understood that I wasn't in this for recognition, that I didn't need a LinkedIn profile with buzzwords or an open concept kitchen to feel like I'd made it, but I'd be lying if I said it didn't sting, watching their faces light up at everyone else's milestones while mine passed unnoticed. It's a strange kind of loneliness when the people who raised you believe you're less than. Not because of who you are, but because of what they can't see. They measured success in promotions and property, while I was counting lives protected, missions completed, threats neutralized. They thought I didn't measure up, but they were using the wrong scale all along. The first thing they broke was my sense of time. Days blended into nights with no warning. Sleep was rationed in hours, sometimes minutes, and always interrupted. I learned quickly that pain wasn't the enemy. Hesitation was. The training stripped you down, made you question everything, then rebuilt you into someone who could act without pause under pressure. We ran drills until our legs gave out. Then we ran more. They trained us to fire accurately after 48 hours with no sleep, to fight hand to hand in silence, to disappear into crowds and become forgettable in seconds. I remember one exercise where we had to track an instructor across a city without being seen. I failed twice. The third time, I followed him into a train station, got eyes on him from 50 yards, and watched him vanish into a sea of commuters like smoke. That's when I understood. Surveillance wasn't just watching. It was thinking like your target, moving before they moved. I stopped looking with my eyes and started seeing with my instincts. There was a whole week devoted to resisting interrogation. No sleep, constant noise, simulated threats. They pulled you apart and waited to see if you'd fall. Some did. I didn't. They said I had the kind of cold calm they looked for, the kind that didn't flinch when a door slammed or a threat got personal. I wasn't the strongest or the fastest, but I adapted. Y endured. Every bruise taught me where my limits were. Every failure showed me how far I could push past them. We weren't training to fight. We were training to think, vanish, survive, and win in silence. At the end, we took no oaths, no photos, no certificates, just a handshake, a look, and new orders burned into memory. From that point on, I didn't just serve, I disappeared. And no one, not even my family, ever saw me the same way again. There's a reason they tell us to cut ties. Not all at once. Not in a way that alarms people, but slowly, subtly. It's safer that way. For them. For us. I stopped showing up to birthdays, skipped weddings, and missed funerals. Each absence was followed by the same question, where were you? And I always gave the same tired answer. Caught up at work. They never knew that work sometimes meant a safe house in the Balkans, or a convoy rolling through hostile terrain under moonlight. They didn't see the weeks I lived off-grid, carrying a burner phone and memorizing aliases like they were prayers. I missed Rachel's baby shower because I was halfway up a mountain tracking a courier who never used the same route twice. I missed Dad's retirement party because I was sitting in a room with no windows, listening to a man confess things that changed the course of our mission. And I missed Christmas 3 years in a row, one of which I spent alone in a cold city, waiting for a contact who never showed. Every time, I told myself the same thing. My silence protects them. The less they know, the less they can be used against me. Because that's what happens. One careless story at a dinner party, one proud parent flashing a photo or repeating a title they don't understand. And suddenly, someone with a grudge has a thread to pull. I became good at letting them be disappointed. I nodded through lectures about priorities. I accepted the passive-aggressive gifts books on work-life balance, articles about career pivots, hints about matchmaking events. They thought I was just stuck. But silence was my armor. Their ignorance was part of the strategy. I kept them safe by letting them believe I was irrelevant. And in doing that, I became a stranger in my own life. That's the part no one warns you about. You don't just disappear from the enemy. You start fading from the people you love, too. It always started the same way. A family gathering, a smile that didn't reach the eyes, and a quick scan from head to toe. My outfit never quite matched the occasion. My shoes always too practical, my makeup too minimal. At Rachel's anniversary dinner, I wore a plain black dress. My mother pulled me aside, her hand resting lightly on my arm like she was about to deliver bad news. Honey, I know you're busy with work, but there are boutiques that won't break the bank. You're representing the family. I nodded and swallowed hard, even though I'd flown in straight from a debrief in Germany. That dress had been the only thing in my closet clean and wrinkle-free after a red-eye flight and a last-minute rental. But none of that mattered. To her, it just looked cheap. Paul wasn't subtle about it either. At his son's baptism, I parked my old Civic next to his gleaming black SUV. He made a show of patting the hood like it was a rescue dog. Still hanging on, huh? Well, reliable over flashy. I guess that's one way to live. I smiled and nodded, fingers tightening around my keys. He didn't know the diplomatic ID in my glove box could get me through borders most people never see. All he saw was a 10-year-old car and a woman without a mortgage. Even when I tried to steer the conversation to neutral ground, it looped back to the same pity. You still renting? Don't you want something permanent? Ever think about freezing your eggs? It came in the form of concern, but it was judgment with a soft voice and a tight smile. They assumed I was behind. Emotionally, financially, socially. To them, I was someone who never quite figured it out. A cautionary tale told over cocktails and roasted lamb. The one who missed her window. I remember one Thanksgiving, Paul's wife cornered me in the kitchen. You should try consulting. My friend made 6 figures in her first year. With your background, you could really reinvent yourself. I was in Kabul the week before, reviewing drone footage and drafting intel briefs on insurgent networks. But sure, maybe I should have gone into consulting. The hardest part wasn't the words, it was the weight behind them. The way they looked at me was like I'd missed out on some universal checklist. Career ladder, wedding album, suburban lawn. I ticked none of their boxes. It was a Tuesday. I had 90 minutes between meetings, just enough time to grab a sandwich, and maybe 10 minutes of peace. Georgetown was packed, as usual, but I found a spot on a side street that looked legal enough. I glanced at the sign. No parking from 3 to 6. It was 1:47. Plenty of time, or so I thought. I ate fast, made a few calls, and checked in with a contact overseas. When I came back, the street looked different. Emptier. Then I saw the fresh gap, where my car had been towed. I stared at the curb like the Civic might reappear out of shame. No such luck. I checked my watch. 2:35. They towed it early. This wasn't just an inconvenience. In the trunk of that car was a secured, biometric-locked laptop case containing intel that needed to be in a skiff in Quantico by 4 p.m. I couldn't just catch a cab. I needed that specific vehicle, and I needed it now. I called the non-emergency line, got the address of the lot, and considered my options. Normally, I'd figure it out myself. But the lot was across town, and my time window was closing. So I did something I rarely did. I called Paul. He worked 3 blocks away. He picked up on the second ring. What's up? My car got towed. Can you give me a lift to the impound lot? It's urgent. Silence, then a sigh. Seriously? Yes, please. He agreed, eventually. Said he'd be there in 20. Showed up in 30. In his black Tesla with the windows down and NPR humming like judgment. As soon as I got in, it started. You still park in that part of town? You do realize they tow everything not bolted to the ground, right? I smiled, just barely. Noted. Let me guess, he continued. You didn't read the sign. I shrugged. I misread it. They took it early. He shook his head. Unbelievable. You're almost 40, and you still can't park legally. I looked out the window. I'd once parallel parked a surveillance van in a hostile bazaar in Beirut, without breaking my cover. But yeah, I guess this one was on me. The silence didn't last long. As soon as we merged onto New York Avenue, Paul started in. This is exactly what I'm talking about, Eleanor. You don't pay attention. You drift through life like it's a daydream, and then you act surprised when things fall apart. I didn't respond. I kept my eyes on the traffic, watching the city blur past the window. How do you even survive? You can't read a sign. You don't plan. You just float, hoping someone will come clean up after you. He was gesturing now, one hand on the wheel, the other painting pictures of my supposed failures in the air. You're almost 40, still renting, still driving that tin can, still stuck in that job you hate. I turned away, not because I disagreed, but because there was nothing I could say without breaking something open that couldn't be closed. He kept going. You need to get serious. Have a plan. Show some ambition. For once in your life, act like an adult. My fingers curled into fists in my lap. My breathing stayed slow, controlled, like I'd been trained. Because this wasn't the first time I'd been talked down to, but it might have been the first time it stung this deep. Not because of what he said, but because he truly believed it. The impound lot was a fortress of chain link and misery on the outskirts of D.C. Paul pulled up to the gate, shaking his head at the grimy surroundings. We walked into the office. It smelled of stale smoke and bureaucracy. A man behind bulletproof glass was ignoring a ringing phone. I'm here for the Honda Civic, I said, sliding my license under the slot. Virginia plates. The man didn't look up. Lots closed for releases. The processing system is down. Come back tomorrow. My stomach tightened. Tomorrow wasn't an option. The intel in the trunk had a shelf life. I can't come back tomorrow. I need that vehicle now. The man chewed his gum loudly. Can't help you, lady. System's down. Rules are rules. Paul stepped forward, his expensive suit looking out of place against the peeling paint. He put on his courtroom voice. Excuse me. I am an attorney. You are legally required to release the vehicle if the owner is present. If you don't process this now, I will have a court order on your desk by morning. And I will sue this lot for unlawful seizure. The clerk finally looked up. He looked bored. Sue me then. Get in line. Lot's closed. Paul turned to me, throwing his hands up. See? This is what happens. You mess up, and there's no fixing it. We're leaving. I'm not leaving, I said. Paul snapped. Eleanor, give it up. You're not getting the car. Stop being stubborn, and let me drive you home so you can wallow in your bad decisions. I ignored him. I didn't argue. I didn't plead. I pulled my phone from my pocket. I didn't dial AAA. I opened a secure app, scanned my thumbprint, and dialed a priority 1 number. Code Phoenix, I said into the phone, my voice flat and cold. Asset detained at impound lot 4. Civil obstruction. The package is in the trunk. Time critical. Requesting immediate intervention. Ollie, I hung up. Paul stared at me. Who was that? Did you just call a towing company? Eleanor, they don't care. I leaned against the wall and crossed my arms. Wait, I'm not waiting in this dump. I have a dinner reservation. Paul reached for the door handle. Then he stopped. Outside, the sound of sirens cut through the air. Not the wail of a police cruiser. The low, aggressive whoop of federal vehicles. Tires screeched on the pavement. Blue and red lights flooded the dirty office through the windows. The door to the office burst open. 4 men in tactical vests marked federal agents stormed in. They didn't look like local cops. They moved with the precision of a strike team. Everyone freeze, the lead agent barked. The clerk behind the glass dropped his sandwich. Paul backed up against the vending machine, his face draining of color. Whoa, I didn't do anything. I'm just her brother. The agents ignored him. They ignored the clerk. 2 of them secured the door. The other 2 walked straight to me. The lead agent, a man I recognized from a joint task force in Yemen, stopped in front of me. He didn't smile. He treated the situation with the gravity of a bomb threat. Captain Ford, he said, we have the perimeter. The recovery team is hooking up your vehicle now. We'll have it at the drop site in 20 minutes. Paul made a choking sound. Captain? I looked at the agent. The clerk refused release. The agent turned to the glass partition. He held up a badge that made the clerk's eyes bug out. Open the gate. Now. Or you will be detained for obstruction of a federal operation. The clerk didn't argue. He mashed the button so hard he nearly broke his finger. The gate outside buzzed open. Through the window, I saw 2 black SUVs flanking my beat-up Honda Civic. An agent was already in the driver's seat of my car. The lead agent turned back to me. "Do you require transport, ma'am? Or are you riding with the civilian?" He gestured to Paul, who was currently shaking near the soda machine. I looked at Paul. He looked at the agents. He looked at the lights. He looked at me. The arrogance was gone. The lectures about adulthood and responsibility had evaporated. He looked at me like he was seeing a stranger, wearing his sister's face. "Eleanor?" he whispered. "What is this?" "It's my job, Paul," I said calmly. "The one you think is boring." I turned to the agent. "I'll ride with you." I walked out the door. The agents fell into formation around me, shielding me as we moved toward the waiting SUV. I didn't look back at Paul. I didn't need to. I left him there in the dirty office, standing next to the vending machine, realizing that while he was playing lawyer, I was playing a game he didn't even know existed. I climbed into the back of the black SUV. The door slammed shut with a heavy, reassuring thud. "Go," I said. We peeled out of the lot, leaving the confusion and the judgment in the rearview mirror. There's a certain strength in being misunderstood. Not the kind that begs to be corrected, but the quiet kind that learns to let assumptions speak for themselves. For most of my life, I let people believe what they wanted to believe about me. They saw an underachiever, a woman past her prime, someone who played it safe. They never saw the weight I carried, so they didn't have to. As we merged onto the highway, escorted by lights and sirens, I checked my watch. 3:15 p.m. We'd make the drop with time to spare. I thought about Paul standing in that lot. I thought about the silence at the dinner table. I used to think it would get easier if I told them. But the truth is, some stories were never meant to be shared, because once you open that door, it can't be closed. So I smiled. The world doesn't need to know the names of the people who hold it together behind the curtain. Sometimes, doing the right thing means never getting credit. And sometimes, the best revenge isn't an argument. It's a motorcade. I closed my eyes and let the convoy take me to work.